Hello and welcome to my record room in sunny Los Angeles, California. Today, the first of what is going to be an occasional series inspired by the success of the Deutsche Grammophon original Source reissues. For those of you who don't know, these extraordinary reissues have gone back to the original 4-track master tapes and have mastered directly from those 4-track master tapes, and they sound incredible. I'll put links below to some more written information about that series, articles I've written, etc., etc. But the purpose of this series is to say, okay, you loved this particular reissue, what do you want to listen to next? And I thought we would begin with one of the barnstorming real humdingers of the original Source series, which is now available again. They've reissued the first 4 titles, unnumbered. The original versions were a limited edition, but now they're unnumbered. So this one you can go out and buy easily. And this is Claudio Abbado's recording of Le Sacre du Printemps, Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, which is just one of the great orchestral showpieces and puts everyone through their paces. The orchestra, the conductor, and especially the engineers, and then the mastering and pressing engineers. It's a formidable piece, and that recording is amazing. Now, I don't actually have my copy that I can show you because I've lent it to a friend who is thoroughly enjoying it. But I'm going to talk about some music which is partly in the world of the Rite of Spring, but also goes in other directions. And let me start, however, with talking about other Abbado recordings of Stravinsky. That Rite of Spring was part of a series of records he did for Deutsche Grammophon with the London Symphony Orchestra in the 70s of a range of Stravinsky's music, and they're all fantastic records. Sonically, they're not really the best versions to go for. If you want to get the absolute best versions sonically, you're going to have to pay out a bit of money. But apart from that original Source version of Le Sacre du Printemps, you have on a single layer SACD, you have that same recording of Le Sacre du Printemps, and this one is mastered by Emil Berliner Studios, the same people who did the remastering on the original Source series, except that this is for single layer SACD. So there isn't a CD layer. You have to have a dedicated SACD player. But this also includes a couple of his other recordings from this group of records. A very nice performance of the Firebird suite, not the full ballet, just the suite, but in particular, this has a far lesser known ballet by Stravinsky called Jeu de cartes. It's basically a balletic representation of a card game, and it's absolutely one of my favorite Stravinsky pieces, and it's very unknown. And this was one of the first recordings that really put it on the map. So you have this, and then again, it'll be expensive, it's out of print, but this is the esoteric, and this is the dual layer CD SACD. So this you can play on a regular CD player as well as SACD. And this has not only Petrushka, again, one of the great Diaghilev ballets that Stravinsky wrote, it was before Rite of Spring, but you also have the Pulcinella, which is, I think, absolutely the benchmark recording. And this is the full ballet, which is written for a combination of vocal soloists and orchestra, and it's one of Stravinsky's earliest and most famous neoclassical works, where he basically reworked music from the Baroque period by a variety of composers. As we now know, at the time we thought it was by Pergolesi, but it's now a variety of composers, and he gave them the Stravinsky spin. And this recording is absolutely the one to go for. If you really like these Abbado performances, these are the ones to go for. Another good recording of Pulcinella on CD I can highly recommend is the Riccardo Schai recording. Next up, I thought I'd show you some other really great audiophile level recordings of the Rite of Spring on vinyl. I mean, there have been so many recordings of this work, especially going into the digital age, but I'm concentrating on just vinyl. First up, Leonard Bernstein's first recording of the Rite of Spring, considered something of a classic. This is a special reissue that was done. I'm not quite sure when it was done. Look at this beautiful gatefold. It was done by Sony, but it is all analog cut. And I couldn't tell you who actually did the cutting, but this is absolutely the best sounding version. You want to avoid the regular original LPs, as with most of the Columbia LPs, they're not sonically the best. But if you can find this, this is great if you love Bernstein's performance. Now, it's not actually my favorite. I'm going to show you two of my absolute favorites here. And maybe the one which, before this Abbado came out in its redone version or original source, this was probably the most spectacular sonically. And this is the one done by Riccardo Muti for EMI with the Philadelphia Orchestra. This is when he had just joined the Philadelphia Orchestra in the 70s, and this was one of the first records he put out. And what's great about this, it's got you know, the great EMI sound. I have to say the vinyl is itself a little ticky even after cleaning, but Mobile Fidelity did a version, and I can just say, get this. This is the one. It's dead quiet surfaces. Yes, it may have a little bit of tweaking with the EQ, but it sounds spectacular. And in many ways, this is still my favorite version of the piece, even to the Abbado with all its spectacular qualities in the new original source version. This recording is just a little bit more unbridled, and I love this. Now, here's another recording which I was aware of from when I was younger, but it was only when I got this particular half-speed pressing that I realized just how great sounding and what a great recording this is. And this is Boulet's first recording with the Cleveland Orchestra, and this is in CBS's own half-speed mastered series. Now, these can be quite variable in terms of quality, but I've picked up a bunch of these Boulet's ones and a few other classical ones, and they sound incredible. Demonstration quality. And I really love this performance. It's less unbridled than the Muti, but being Boulet's, you just hear everything, and it does not want for fierceness. So this I highly recommend. Now, I don't know if this has been reissued on SACD. Dutton, which is a small independent label out of England, they've been reissuing quite a few of these Boulet's recordings on SACD CD dual layer, and they may have done this one. They've certainly done a few of the others, like their Firebird is fantastic, another piece that I'm going to come on to in a moment. But otherwise, just hunt for this. You should find this in the used bins for not more than somewhere between $20 and $30. People don't realize how good these sound. They're really amazing. So what is the defining factor in Stravinsky's Rite of Spring? I mean, it basically announced the end of 19th century music. It's outrageous rhythms, brutality, barbarousness. The subject matter is, you know, a ritual dance to death of a young maiden. I mean, everything about it was basically saying, we're done with the 19th century, welcome to the 20th century. It's a piece of musical barbarism. Really, it is. And I've picked out some other pieces which are similarly acts of musical barbarism. And at the very, very top of that list is Bartok's ballet, The Miraculous Mandarin. This is just a sensational piece of music, and it's every bit as savage, as demanding, as modernistic as the Rite of Spring. It's less well known. I really think you need to go for the full ballet, which has a choir at the end. I have actually seen this performed for my 21st birthday at the Colosseum, which was the other opera house in London, along with the Royal Opera House. They did an evening of all three of Bartok's theatre works. So it's this, The Wooden Prince, another ballet, and then the opera Bluebeard's Castle, and it was just fantastic to see these live, done as a ballet. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there's really only one recording of this to have, and it's this one. Again, it's Boulet's on top form. It's just an absolutely savage, brutal, but typically for Boulez, you're hearing everything. And the only problem is it's on CBS. So it's on CBS vinyl. So, the pressings are not good. I've tried British pressings, US pressings, the quadraphonic pressing, but the really great news is that Dutton, that I mentioned earlier, has just issued this on a SACD CD, and there the sound is killer. Having said that, I think this is my original English pressing. Yes, you can see it's got the blue label. It's fine, but that Dutton is the way to go. This is such a cool piece. I mean, the story of it is gruesome, to say the least. Basically, a group of thieves use a girl to lure men into this room where they basically kill them and rob them. And finally, the Mandarin comes in and he's madly in love with her. And they try to kill him in all these different ways. They hang him, they drown him, they start chopping him up. It's absolutely brutal. And in the end, I won't give away the ending. It's extraordinary. This is such a great piece, such an amazing recording. But I thought I'd mention just another recording here, which you may not be aware of, which is on Mercury. And this is with another great Bartok conductor, Anatol Dorati. He did a whole series of these really fine Bartok recordings for Mercury. This one is with, the BBC Symphony Orchestra. Again, it's for full ballet. There's another very fine recording on Deutsche Grammophon. Again, I couldn't find it. It's with Claudio Abbado. But this is Mercury, incredibly vivid sound, slightly noisy vinyl because it's Mercury. You can also go for the CD version of this. And what's wonderful here is it also has the divertimento for strings, one of my favorite Bartok pieces. So here's an alternative, but go for that Boulez. And I would say in both case of all these Boulez things, go for his earlier CBS versions over the later Deutsche Grammophons. I mean, the later Deutsche Grammophons on CD are really good, but there's just something about these early CBS Columbia versions. And just to round out the triptych of the Bartok, the other ballet, I'm not going to talk about Bluebeard's Castle, the other ballet, Wooden Prince. Now, this is an earlier work, and in relation to the Miraculous Mandarin, it's kind of like the Firebird is to the Rite of Spring. It's more overtly romantic, it's less modernistic and brutal. It's not so well known, this piece, but it's a gorgeous piece, and I highly recommend investigating it. Again, it's Boulez, it's on CBS, so the vinyl isn't great. I think this is again an English pressing. Now, if you were smart and managed to pick up the Sony box set of all of Boulez's recordings issued on CD a few years ago, you've again got a terrific sounding version of these records. That set, like all the Sony sets, they do superb remastering. Unfortunately, it's out of print now. It's probably going to cost you a fortune. I would avoid the earlier CD remasterings. They're not great. So I think this may have been reissued by Dutton. I'm not sure. But you could also just spring for the vinyl. You'll get a good sense of the performance in the recording. This is a really lovely recording. Continuing in the vein of musical barbarism in the early 20th century. So we've had two of the masters, Stravinsky and Bartok. So who's the third? Absolutely, without doubt, Prokofiev. And the piece I'm talking about in particular is the Scythian Suite. And this thing is brutal. It's just so in your face. Rhythmic, thrilling, just you want to play it at high volume, make sure no one's around. This is actually a really fine recording. This whole LP, it's coupled with the more well-known Lieutenant Kijé suite this would be a prime candidate for reissue in the original Source series. With the Chicago Symphony, you know, Abbado made all these great recordings in the 70s with the Chicago Symphony, with the London Symphony Orchestra, and this is one of the great ones. However, if you want to go down the route of ultimate audiophile, maximum warmth, impact, in your face, incredible sound, fierce performance, there's really only one version to go to. And those of you who know this stuff know what I'm talking about. This is Antal Dorati again with the London Symphony Orchestra, doing not only the Scythian Suite but also the Love for Three Oranges. This is on Mercury. This is the Classic Records reissue, which, if you can get hold of it, is the one to get hold of. I also have the 45 RPM back in the cupboard somewhere, which sounds even more amazing. This pressing, this mastering is second to none. And frankly, all the Classic Records reissues of the Mercury catalogue are absolutely in a class of their own. God, look at that artwork. It's amazing. And, you know, the Love for Three Oranges is really great. I've actually seen that opera, which is kind of extraordinary. I managed in England, in London, to go and they would do some of these really obscure operas, and that one I saw, I think actually I saw that one at Glyndebourne. God, it was good. It was great. Sticking with musical barbarism, early 20th century, someone you're not necessarily going to think of right away, but you should have, and that is Edgar Varese. And again, we've got another Boulez incomparable recording. Again, he re-recorded all this repertoire with Deutsche Grammophon. He did a whole album of Varese works, but I just love these early CBS ones. And look at this artwork. It's so cool. The piece I'm thinking of in particular is a Mérique. He was French. He came to live in New York at the turn of the century, well, like around, I think, 1915. And he actually portrays the sound of the city in here. It's got a huge percussion section with sirens, and it's just pulverizing. This record also has two of his other masterpieces, Arcana and Ionisation. Varese is such an important figure in early 20th century music. I mean, one of the most important things he did was he created what is generally considered to be the first piece of electronic music, the poem Electronique, which was written for the World's Fair in whatever year, I can't remember, but you went into this pavilion and this music was playing, and basically sampled sounds and manipulated sounds electronically. He was one of the pioneers of what's called musique concrète, which is where you recorded real sounds and then manipulated them and used them within electronic music. I just love this record. This is my English pressing from when I was a teenager. It's fantastic. This has not been reissued in any other audiophile kind of way. So again, you'll stick with the vinyl. What are you going to do? But another record, which doesn't have a Mérique, but is again a certifiable audiophile classic, is this one. It's got Arcana, it's got Ionisation, but then it's also got Intégrale, and this is with Zubin Mehta and the Los Angeles Phil, part of their legendary series of recordings done at Royce Hall at UCLA, just up the street from where I live, and a hall I've actually not only gone to concerts in, but I've actually sung there in some big concerts. Last thing I did was a Beethoven Mass, huge choir. It was great. It's an incredible hall, incredible acoustic, and all these Zubin Mehta records are worth hunting out either on Decca or UK Press London's. This is one of their showstoppers. There are a couple of other great Varese albums in the catalogue of Audiophile Standard. Not going to talk about them here, but, you know, this is an alternative, but it doesn't have a Mérique. Alas, I don't think Mehta ever recorded a Mérique. As far as a Mérique is concerned, you want to go for that Boulez version. Continuing, not so much musical barbarism, but early 20th century orchestral music that's really pushing at the boundaries and is really intense. And the work I really want to single out here is Berg's 3 orchestral pieces. And the way I discovered this music was in this set, Herbert von Karajan's set of the Second Viennese School, a 4 LP set devoted to the music of Schoenberg and his 2 pupils, Berg and Webern. These were the guys at the vanguard of atonality moving into serialism, but Berg is very accessible. He's still working within a sense of some tonality, and the 3 orchestral pieces are incredible. In particular, the last piece, it's a march, and it's just this hellish, ghoulish march to just oblivion, violence and oblivion. This performance is still my favorite. You can buy that particular record. I think it couples the orchestral suites with the lyric suite, very different. You can buy that individually, but you can also buy this whole set. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm really, really hoping to persuade DG Rainer Meyerd to do this set. This would be an amazing set to add to the original Source series. And now that they can master directly from 8-track, not just 4-track, they can master and cut directly from 8-track. This is probably, I would guess, originally an 8-track recording. They could do that. How amazing would it be to have this set? You know, when Karajan wanted to do this, he was the star of Deutsche Grammophon, and they wouldn't fund it. So he funded it himself, and it was a huge bestseller. Let me just say that while you can buy that Schoenberg, Berg, Webern set on vinyl of the period, it is somewhat compromised sonically, like all the Deutsche Grammophones of that period are, the original pressings. There is a single layer SACD set remastered by Emil Berliner Studios, came out a couple of years ago. You could probably still find it. It might cost you a bit, but the sound on that is absolutely amazing. But my most fervent desire is that one day Rainer Meyerd and his team will redo that whole set for original Source from the 8-track masters, because they can now do that, and that would be amazing. It's a set that really, really warrants being given that top-level reissue treatment. It's one of the jewels in the Deutsche Grammophon catalogue. But let me just also mention another recording of the Berg 3 orchestral pieces, which is genuinely an audiophile level recording and record. It's out of print, but you probably can find it at a price. It's from this set, which was put out, I think, by Speaker's Corner, not Classic Records, Speaker's Corner. It's the 3 LPs of music from this period, the New Viennese School. And one of these is this one. Antal Dorati doing, again, a selection of orchestral works by the New Viennese School, including the 3 orchestral pieces with the London Symphony Orchestra. Again, it's a sonic spectacular in full Mercury sound. This one recorded, I think, to 35 millimeter. Yes, this one recorded to 35 millimeter film. It's wonderful. I must confess, I do kind of prefer the Karajan performance, but this is really great. And it's really interesting. The work is one of those pieces that every time I hear it, a different recording, and I've also heard it live in concert a couple of times, it can sound very, very different. The scoring is so complex and rich that different conductors bring out different qualities in the score, and it's one of those works that literally can sound like a different work depending on who's conducting and playing it. Anyway, I highly recommend investigating Berg's 3 orchestral pieces. Moving into something a little gentler, one of the other great composers for the Diaghilev Ballet, which is the organization for which Stravinsky wrote his 3 famous ballets and later ballets, and including the Rite of Spring. The other composer who composed for them was Ravel, and probably his greatest orchestral piece is the ballet he wrote, Daphnis and Chloe. This is the most gorgeous piece. It's certainly not barbarous in the way that the Rite of Spring is, although it does finish up with a pretty barbarous sort of erotic dance and orgy where people just go crazy. And there are a number of really great recordings of this. This is one of the very best. It's an early Decca. Let me just have a look here. It's a Decca from 1959. There's the back of it. Pierre Monteur, the great French conductor. Actually, I'm wondering if he conducted the first performance of this or an early performance. Quite possible. He was the conductor at that first performance of the Rite of Spring. This recording by the London Symphony Orchestra is one of the most celebrated. This is a Decca. It's I believe it's a wideband. Yeah, it's an early grooved wideband. I also have somewhere the Org 45, which sounds amazing, mastered by Bernie Grunman. This is an absolute classic. If you want to try and find an original pressing, the cheapest way to do that would be to find in London, or I think it must have been released on Ace of Diamonds. Ace of Diamonds are a great way to buy these early Deccas at a much cheaper price, and they're often cut, plated from exactly the same metalwork, etc., identical, and cost you a fraction of the amount of money. Another really great recording of this is the one by André Cuitons. Now, this is a reissue box done on Testament of all the Ravel orchestral music. To buy this, an original would cost you more money than I dare even want to think about. But you can also find, the individual records in various reissues. I know my colleague at Tracking Angle, Michael Johnson, has managed to pick up a few of these on, for example, EMI's Classics for Pleasure label, etc., etc. What's wonderful about this is indisputably a French performance. You've got a French orchestra sounding very French, and you've got Cuitons, one of the great conductors. Very underrated, I think. One of the things that he did that's marvelous is his Beethoven cycle with the Berlin Phil just before Karajan took over, and it's a wonderful cycle which you can pick up on record, Classics for Pleasure issued it, for example. Anyway, this is another lovely version, a really great version, funnily enough. I don't have the LP. I think I lent it to someone and it never came back, but readily available. It's on Decca or London. It's a very early digital recording, and it's with Charles Dutoit conducting the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and it is audiophile all the way. Even though it's early digital, it's a fantastic recording, and you can either pick that up on LP, Decca, or a UK Press London, or you can get the CD. The CD sounds really good. And sticking with Ravel, I thought I'd just mention this other work of his. It's a fascinating work. It's called La Valse. And what he did was he took this form of the waltz, which most people knew in, the Strauss waltzes. You think of this music as being very friendly and beautiful and easy on the ear. And he took the waltz form and he wrote this extraordinary symphonic poem, which again, it's kind of predicting the barbarism, the collapse of the world wars, etc. But he does it in a waltz format. And as the piece progresses, it just gets more and more out of control, and then just basically erupts and collapses at the same time. This recording on Mercury is absolutely one of the best, with the great Paul Paray and the Detroit Symphony. This is the Classic Records reissue. Classic did a 45 RPM version of this set, but they didn't put La Valse on it, which is just extraordinary. I just can't believe it. This is one of the very best sounding of the Mercuries, and this is the regular 33, which has all the music, and this is the one to find, and you probably can find it. Just be patient. It's an amazing record. You've got all these other beautiful pieces on it by Ravel, and Ibert's Escale Ports of Call, which is a lovely piece of music. Perret is superb in French music and much else. A very straight ahead conductor. He doesn't sort of gild the lily, tends towards faster speeds. This record is one of his best, really worth picking up. And in conclusion of this video of what to listen to after you've listened to DG's original source version of the Rite of Spring with Claudio Abbado, I thought I'd throw this in because why not? It's kind of got a bit of barbarism. It's got tons of percussion. It's rhythmically exciting. Have you guessed what it is? It's got a choir in it. Carmina Burana. Oh, such a overplayed, overperformed piece of the classical repertoire. But don't listen to it for a while and then listen to this recording. This is hands down, as far as I'm concerned, the best recording. And this is reissued by Speaker's Corner, and I believe this might still be available. It's worth hunting around for. It's a great pressing. It hugely improves the sound quality of the original. Why is this recording so great? Well, first of all, Carl Orff was at the sessions. But then you've got Eugen Joachim, one of the great conductors of his time. But the soloists are amazing. You've got Gundula Janowitz as the soprano with her gorgeous voice, Gerhard Stolzer, an amazing character tenor, and the great Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau as the baritone. This work is based on all these medieval songs and pieces of music, and then he reworks it in this very 20th century idiom with tons of percussion, rhythmically exciting. Even if you think you don't know this piece, you do know this piece. It has been used, especially some of the opening choruses have been used endlessly in movies like Excalibur, in commercials, etc. It's a very accessible piece. It's a great piece to give to someone who's just getting into classical, or if you want to explore classical a bit. It's divided into different sections depicting different aspects of medieval life. One of the most enjoyable is In Taberna. Everything's in Latin, by the way, even the raunchy stuff, and this thing gets raunchy. There's a great solo where Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau plays this abbot who is drunk out of his gourd, and he just sings about drinking and how great it is and all of that. And then you have this amazing song, which is the song sung by a swan who is being roasted on a spit. It is one of the most peculiar pieces of music ever, and no one has done it better than Gerhard Stolzer. Stolzer was an amazing character tenor. He features on Scholte's superb recordings of Salome and Electra by Richard Strauss, and he uses this high falsetto, and you totally believe you are listening to a swan roasting on a spit over an open fire. It's surreal. And then you have a section which is devoted to love. And at the end of this, you have, and again, this is raunchy stuff. It's not just about love, it's about sex. These medieval guys, I mean, what else were you going to do? You know, you were going to die of plague, whatever. I mean, at least sex was something you could do. Had to keep it away from the church. But anyway, but it ends here with this girl, the soprano, and she basically has a musical orgasm. And it's unbelievable. She has to go right up into the stratosphere of her voice, as high as you can imagine. And I've heard so many recordings of this. No one comes close to Gundula Janowitz. Those of you who have bought some of the other Deutsche Grammophon original source, in particular the Strauss Four Last Songs, she is the soloist on that. You will know how exquisite and beautiful and pure her voice is in the upper registers, and it's just effortless. And the way she goes up there, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, Orff, when he heard the sessions, he must have just gone, oh boy, I never thought anyone would sing it that way. There are other great recordings of this. I will mention in particular on EMI, there's the André Previn. There's also one by Rafael Frubeck de Burgos. I mean, the Preven's really good, recorded in great EMI sound. A funny little side story to that is that just after they made the recording, or when they were about to make the recording, they did a performance with the same forces, the same soloists at the BBC Proms, this big concert series that happens in London in the summer. And I was listening to it on the radio. This was in the early mid-70s. And the baritone soloist, Thomas Allen, at the beginning of his career, he actually passed out. I was listening on the radio and suddenly he stopped singing and everything sort of came to a halt and there was lots of muttering and confusion. And then the radio announcer came in, that BBC voice said, it seems that our baritone soloist has passed out and he's been carried out and we don't know what's going to happen. And actually what happened was one of the students who was at the front, was at the proms, they take out all the stalls seating. It's a big sort of circular arena. And you go as a promenader, a promer, as they say, and you stand there, you get in for like a few bucks, and you can go to all these concerts for practically nothing. He was standing there, and he was a singer, and he knew the piece. So he came up on stage, and he finished the work. It was incredible. It's a very, very famous story. You can go online and read about it. I think they even have the recording pasted online. But even though that's a great recording, and I love Previn, I mean, he's just great. This is the recording to have. Try and get the Speaker's Corner version and you'll enjoy. It's so much fun. It's such a fresh performance. And I think part of the reason it's so great is he takes it seriously. He doesn't shortchange the music. There's another great recording, actually. I just remembered right now. It's over there somewhere. But it's the Muti recording, EMI mid-70s. That's actually a really good one as well. Very good sound. But this is the one to go for. Anyway. That's the end of my selection of records to listen to after you've listened to the Rite of Spring. If you haven't bought that DG Original Source Rite of Spring, go and get it. The sound on it's amazing. And it's a really, really good performance. I mean, it's a performance I grew up with and loved. But it was so sonically compromised until both that SACD came out and then a couple of years later, the new vinyl. I know people who are seasoned audiophiles, etc., who've put that thing on and just go, wow. Actually, that the person who has my copy right now, he said to me, wow, just wow. I'm more or less quoting him exactly. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I managed to get to the end of this video before the light is fading. It's getting darker and darker in here. But do please like and subscribe. I will put information below about, you can go to Tracking Angle, where I write regularly about classical music. I'll put a link to my most recent article about the original source, which is they're about to come out with this incredible set of the Bruckner symphonies with Karajan conducting mastered directly from 8-track, which is just a whole new frontier in technology. It's incredible. Those folks at EBS, Emil Berliner Studios, Rainer Meyer, Sidney Meyer, I mean, my God, the work they're doing is absolutely incredible. Anyway, check out my writing on Tracking Angle. I now have an Instagram account. I've been slightly hectored into doing that by my daughter, but since she was the one who persuaded me to start doing this channel, she clearly knows what's good for me. And what's great about the Instagram account is I can just post photos of stuff I'm listening to or just bought or whatever, and you can sort of ride vicariously along. Let me also mention that we are, myself, Michael Johnson, who also writes for Tracking Angle, and his channel is Poetry on Plastic, and then Greg, who has a channel called Flowering Spikes. We do a monthly live stream on the Jazz Bums site. It's called Classical Bums. We've done 2 of these so far. It's great fun. We all get to chat and pontificate. And, you know, I love the sound of my own voice, so I just keep rattling on all the time. But you can check into that, and we'd love to have you along for those. Just go to the Jazz Bum site, which is a great channel, by the way. All kinds of great stuff, and if you're not subscribed to them, you should be if you're into jazz. But check us out there, and I think that's about it. Have I said everything I need to say? I think so. So until next time, happy listening and Good night.